It's 10 o'clock, folks. Welcome, welcome. Glad you could make it for tonight's panel. How we all feeling tonight? You know what? It's 10 o'clock. I know how we're all a little exhausted. I'll settle for that. Welcome, each and every one of you, to Gundam 101, Getting into Gundam. Hopefully we all enjoy this panel. This is intended as a general overview, some great starting points for Gundam, a bit of explanations on some of the series, and some of the extended media surrounding Gundam. Now, with that being said, you're probably asking yourself why in the world Gundam's even important in the first place if you've never seen it before. So we're going to cover some of the probably basic reasons why, if you've never heard of it before, these are reasons why you might take interest in it. To start, it's basically Japan's equivalent to Star Wars to a certain extent. Both got their start in the 70s, both of them were led by influential and important directors of their time, and both of them are still continuing on to this day with constant new releases coming out. In that same way, it has become a media juggernaut. I don't know if any of you have been paying attention to Bandai's merch details, but Dragon Ball Z and One Piece have been their biggest sellers, with Gundam close behind them in third place. Though, for this year, potentially, this may be the first year that Gundam upsets it and actually takes first place, so who knows. On top of that, it also helped push the envelope for anime storytelling. Gundam was one of the first really dark, gritty shows that helped create the real robot genre, something we'll probably cover in just a moment or two. And on top of all of that, it is a story with an evergreen message, one that I think is best succinctly summed up as follows. Peace cannot be obtained by force. It can only be achieved through understanding. Now, before we get too far along, I feel like it's important to warn some of you about a couple of things. Let's just go through the doctor's advisory here. Gundam, as a series in general, covers and involves a lot of very serious and heavy material. Watching the Gundam franchise may cause side effects, including but not limited to exposure to many of the following: child soldiers, child abuse, substance abuse, physical abuse, corporal punishment, suicide, brutal war crimes, terrorism, and even death. Consume at your own risk. Don't say you haven't been warned. This is not a show for kids, keep that in mind. There are some entries that are great for kids, and we're not going to go too horrible with, awful things, but please remember, this is mostly meant for adults. So the things we're going to cover is generally what is Mecha, for those of you that may not be familiar with it, and what is the real robot genre. We'll go over the different Gundam timelines, because that's usually a big hurdle for a lot of people. And we'll cover the big four shows that we generally recommend folks to start with. After that, we'll cover other great beginner starting points, get into some of the more intermediate follow-up shows that we'd also recommend following up with. We'll cover some of the more advanced niche things, and then we'll cover Gundam as a hobby in general. Now, before we get too far along, I will also mention some of these slides we're going to be presenting up here are going to be very information dense. If at any point you want to take pictures of the screen so that you can save that info so that you can use it later on down the line, feel free. I will also mention we have a huge display table full of some of the models we've built in the past. If at any point you're curious, maybe duck your head down for the folks behind you, but if you want to take a look, feel free. So, before we get too far along, I would like to ask any of you out in the audience who'd like to answer, what sorts of mecha shows have you watched in the past?
Do Transformers count? Do Transformers count?
You know what? I think some people would argue that one, but I'm going to allow it.
That one robots.
I was going to say, I've been...
You there, Kenobi. Eva, solid choice. Yes, you in the front.
Well, the first actual Gundam I ever fully watched was The Witch from Mercury.
Witch from Mercury, recent release, solid choice.
How about the one on the right?
G-Cogs and I was working.
Solid choices. You back there.
Gurren Lagann.
Absolutely, wonderful
Super
choice.
Robot.
I hate to stop there, but we do probably want to move along. I feel like we have a lot of people who have some solid experience with Mecha, so that's fantastic to hear. So let's explain one of the important differences, that being the difference between Super Robot and Real Robot. Now, Super Robot was what originally started out the Mecha genre. You had stuff like, Getter Robo, Mazinger Z, these awesome shows where, these robots are superhuman machines that feel almost like, a superhero in its own right. It's one of a kind, it's unique. It can get in there and it can beat up the bad guys and win the day. Super Robot has that sort of superhero-ish tone to it, whereas Real Robot, it treats the machines almost more akin to like a tank or a jet fighter or something along those lines. You've got more military and political themes as opposed to it being sort of, Saturday morning monster of the week sort of stuff. Generally, the big difference between Real Robot and Super Robot primarily is going to be the tone. What sort of story the author is trying to tell. Gundam primarily falls into the real robot genre. There are exceptions, but they are rare. So now that we've covered the difference between, let's talk timelines. Okay, you see that giant mess of lines there? Ignore that. We're not going to pay any attention to that. That is not important. We're going to simplify this, make it easy for you folks. Don't you worry about it.
We'll get there when we get there.
We'll get there when we get there. Here's the important distinction. Series with a blue highlight on them, those are going to be from the main timeline to Gundam known as the Universal Century. This was what started things out. This is the longest running timeline with the most entries. Generally, you're going to want to start with what we will recommend is the Big Four, and then from there move forward into further UC. That being said, there are other good starting points. Don't worry, we'll get there. The stuff we've highlighted in red are going to be alternate timelines. Think of it almost like Gundam as an anthology. All these different series with the one universal signifying factor between them being Gundams, the machines themselves, not necessarily the story plot threads, but the machine. If they're all their own alternate universe, they all have their own, unique timeline that is not connected to UC at all. You can generally start with most of the alt timelines, but as for where we would personally recommend starting with Gundam, we are going to recommend the Big Four, the first original 4 Gundam series that were released. Starting off with, and I'm going to let my co-host Lee cover this one.
Alright, beginning our beloved series and IP in general is Mobile Suit Gundam, or fans colloquially calling 0079 to specify it. Follows Amuro Ray alongside the White Base piloting the titular mobile suit to stop the Principality of Zeon in the 1-year war. Now, this was released in 1979, so bear in mind the animation is quite aged.
It's not that aged. I mean, let's give them an example, show them what they can expect.
It's gotta be! It's him! He's come back to fight us! I'm sure of it! Sure. Yes, it is you, Shar!
Well, you've improved on your skills, Gundam. Let's test them out. Good.
Get out, Seals! Leave, Jaburo! Lieutenant Woody! Get out of there!
You must be joking.
Lieutenant! Please, Lieutenant, no! Shar, hold it!
The main camera's been damaged. Hey, Berezkinu, can you read me? I need some backup now.
Don't get in my way! I'm gonna take out Shar! I warned you!
Don't get me wrong, it is a bit funny in hindsight, but do bear in mind, we just watched a married man die brutally at the hands of an enemy soldier, and then that enemy soldier's subordinate get absolutely one shot through the cockpit. It's fun to watch the, show try to stay on model back in the day, but it is still a very dark story.
If you can look past the aging animation, you'll find yourself quite compelling storytelling and so many great character arcs. One specifically is Shar Aznavour, and he steals the show.
I'll save my comment, but that's putting it a little lightly, at least in my case. Honestly, Gundam was heavily inspired a lot by previous conflicts, World War II, the Korean War, a lot of those heavier moments, especially for the Japanese at the time, and it definitely shows in the themes and the storytelling there.
Another thing that Gundam introduces an archetypal character known as new types. And for those wondering what new types are, think of it kind of like the Star Wars and Force, but in Gundam's sense, new types are people that are evolved and living in space, and they are psychics. They have empathic abilities, they can sense the danger and malintentions of those around them. I guess it would be more akin to like Spidey sense, because they can literally sense danger in real time around them in space. Right.
So we've covered Mobile Suit Gundam, and we will cover the other three series that follow up past it, starting with Zeta Gundam. Zeta Gundam was essentially intended as a direct sequel to the original Mobile Suit Gundam and flips the story a little bit on its head. Instead of it being, following the Earth forces in their fight against Zeon, now we witness as the Earth's government has essentially grown corrupt from within by the hands of a new force called the Titans, and we witness the movement called the Anti-Earth Union Group, trying to fight back with our protagonist, Camille Bidan. Now, don't get me wrong, this would easily be considered the gritty younger brother to Gundam. The original Gundam, very dark storyline, very compelling. Zeta takes it up and kicks it up a notch, because at this point, the director, Yoshiyuki Tomino, has done a bunch of other shows like Ideon, or A Battler Dunbine, and the tone in those ones is probably even darker than this. But again, the one other thing we will probably mention most is the animation is still a bit older. We're in the 80s now, but it's still going to be something you're not going to be able to handle if you can't handle older animation.
Get out of my way! Say something! Is that Ensign Rekoa? You're not going to reply? If you don't, then I know it's you! How could you take part in this hideous operation? Tell me that!
A child like you could never understand. And you've got to move faster than that, or you'll never defeat Shirako.
A beam saber? I don't understand, and I'll never forgive you for this!
Once you're dead, it won't matter if you forgive me. Right, little boy?
You snake!
Again, the tone definitely at a solid pace, and the one thing I will say, this is generally considered, at least in my respects and probably a lot of other people's, as one of the best Gundam entries. It's worth getting to, even if you can't handle going through some of the older stuff. I highly recommend it. Moving on to the next one, we have Double Zeta. Double Zeta is one that is admittedly slept on by a lot of folks. It's a fantastic series with a lot of interesting twists and turns to it. Admittedly, because of the very dark tone that Zeta had, this one starts out oddly comedic. Granted, I would say that's probably a benefit, but, Double Zeta, it does get serious very, very quickly.
まだあのモビルスーツもやっつけてない。戻るぞ、死にたくない。ダメだ。あいつをやっつけるまではいけない。逃げるのよ。分かってるけど、ダブルゼータだ。来た。まだ逃げるとは正気か。正気で戦争ができるか。
Definitely a bit more of a serious tone.
What you all just witnessed there is a colony, a space colony crashing into the Earth. Not leveling cities, millions of people are dying in those instances.
Like we said, Gundam gets very dark.
Just to mention, that is the second one that's been dropped on Earth.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
First wave up at Australia.
Wouldn't it be third since 0083?
Technically yes, but also no.
I was gonna say, isn't that pretty much a running gag among Gundam at this point? It's like, oh, watch out, colony drop!
I would always say the running gag at UC is, and then it got worse.
Like, a colony drop.
Yes, precisely. Now, the one thing I will also mention is a lot of people will try and tell you that Double Zeta is one of those shows that you can just skip past. It's not important, it's something you can just go over. They are liars. They are cheats and liars, and they are trying to run you astray. Do not listen to them. I promise you, this one is well worth your time and your energy. And for the last of the big four, we have
Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack. This is the final part of the Big Four and the closing loop. This follows Amuro Ray and the Earth Federation as they try and stop Neo Zeon from crashing a asteroid known as Axis into the Earth. This was meant to be a culmination of the Universal Century and is a very solid entry, one of the first feature-length films in the Gundam franchise. It was considered by many as one of the best, like I said. Ironically, Tony kind of thought it was a little mid, but we'll get there and explain why. There's a lot of great stuff in this entry, and I highly recommend it.
Signal all units to withdraw. We've done what's required to send Hitler to Earth.
I've signaled them, but we're unable to scatter Minovsky particles to prevent them from detecting our mobile suits moving through their blockade.
That puts Cutie in danger. Okay. We'll back up units Yak Doga and bring him in.
No one will happen if this hits the Earth. The planet's temperature will drop quickly and people won't be able to live. It'll cause a nuclear winter.
Those living on Earth only care about themselves and no one else. That's why I've decided to get rid of them all.
No one has the right to punish human beings that way.
I'm sure Astaroth. It's my destiny to enforce discipline.
You're full of yourself.
The Earth cannot go on like this any longer.
So like I said, with this being the first feature-length film for the Gundam franchise, the budget was much higher, the animation was extremely well done, and the mechanics and the machinery that the Gundams present there are top-notch. And this was released in 1988.
Tail end of the 80s, you're getting some really good stuff by this point. But with that being said, that covers the Big Four. This is what most people who are Gundam veterans are going to recommend as your big through line for Gundam. Now, I understand. Most people generally don't want to go all the way back to something from 79 as their starting point and watch something quite so old. I understand that. I don't agree with it, but I understand that. That's simply the times we live in. People want something that looks more modern, more fresh. And that's why we're going to cover some other great beginner entry points. Stuff that is a bit more modern, more updated, better animation, but still serves as good entry points to Gundam nonetheless, both within the Universal Century and the different alternate timelines that exist for it. Starting off with
Mobile Suit Gundam 0080, War in the Pocket, a favorite of mine, and this was one of my favorite entries in it. It follows Alfred Izuruha and Bernard Wiseman. You can kind of consider this a Christmas flick if you want in the same light that Die Hard is. But it follows Alfred as he gets swept up in a Xeon Cyclops team plot to destroy a new experimental Gundam mobile suit. And I really think this gets slept on. There's not a lot of people that watch it as much. I would definitely say it dials it up to 11 on the scale of violence and trauma, as opposed to the older series, because a lot of people get murdered.
To clarify on that, this was the first original video animation for Mobile Suit Gundam. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but there's a difference between things like TV anime, movies that are animated, and OVAs. With TV and movies, you generally have to worry about the ratings board, the people who are going to tell you, hey, this is what you can put in, this is what you can't. With an OVA, that is not the case. This is straight to home VHS animation, so they did not have to worry about what any censors would have told them. Naturally, it gets a bit more graphic. Kids, cover your eyes.
So, Bernie, can you beat it?
It's a piece of cake.
Piece of cake.
Well, at least half a piece. I'd say our chances are 50-50.
3 hours later.
Hey, look at this. These are Xeon guns.
too far forward, my apologies.
Like I said, it does dial it up to 11, and as much as it seems like a fun little slice of life with Alfred getting swept up in the Xeon plot, it's terribly tragic.
It really is. Personally, I would say if there is one piece of Gundam media that you decide to watch after viewing this panel, please make it 0080. It's only about 6 30-minute OVAs. You can easily watch it in about the time span of a general movie. I promise you, it is well worth it. Moving on to our next solid choice for a solid starter entry. Mobile Suit Gundam the 08MST. Now, this one is very much a case of, hey, let's take the whole Gundam idea, but let's give it Vietnam vibes now. We're in the jungles of Southeast Asia. It's grounded, it's gritty, it's dirty. You've got soldiers and, doing what's necessary. None of the trope of a child falling into a mobile suit and piloting it at the bequest of their father, essentially. That being said, it does feature probably a very surprising trait to it as well, in the fact that it has probably one of the better romances to have come out of a Gundam story, with the titular protagonist of Shiro Amada actually getting into a romance with a Xeon pilot on the other side of the war named Aina Sahalin. Very much a Romeo and Juliet sort of vibe to it. And Lee would never forgive me if I did not mention it is home to what many fans consider one of the best fighting scenes for Mecha that people generally praise to no end, the Goof Cusp.
We really love the spill of oil in 90s animation.
Yes. Now, I was going to say, do you want to wrap this one up?
I'd say the animation is top notch, and it's definitely highly recommended, if not one of the best OVAs you can watch in the Gundam series, specifically the Universal Century.
Like we said, with this one and the previous one, there's really not a lot of previous knowledge of Universal Century required, so thankfully it also makes for a great starting point. Next up in our list of good entry points, we have Mobile Suit Gundam, The Origin. This one is far more modern, having been released back in 2015 to about around 2019. This one is actually a prequel to the original Gundam series, and this is one that I would personally recommend if you're a fan of more politics over mecha. It has sort of a almost Game of Thrones politics style to it. You witness the players behind the scenes and how they're moving about, shaping the events of history. And you witness big historical events that lead to the important moments.
We must rise up. We have the potential to make history today. That said, we might also provide the spark to ignite an all-out war between the Federation and Xeon. Friends, think back and remember. Why did we all enroll here? Why did we want to become soldiers? It was to protect the lives, the rights and property of space noids. And it was never to serve the Federation. Let the Federation garrison force mobilize. They claim to be dispatchable on ground control, but they will murder the citizens of Zoo City. This isn't about help. It's about doing what's right.
There you go, bitch kid. You got a little strong.
You must understand one thing. This is not one of our drills. This is no mock battle. The bullets out there will be real. If you get hit, you could die. And in all likelihood, some of us surely will. But will you stand with me? All right, then let's move on!
1 hour later.
Commence the operation. Fire and begin storming the building.
Fire for effect! Now!
To the backup generator!
Now, I will mention, despite its name, there are some people that will tell you that Gundam the Origin might not be the best starting point. And I would technically agree to a certain extent. There's a lot of characters that show up that you normally are expected to have known from the original Gundam, but alternatively, this can also serve as a great introduction to them as well, getting to see their history before you see what happens to them later on in the war. Now, with that being said, I should also mention this is technically not canon to the Universal Century timeline, but for the most part, it's mostly down to minor nitpicks and technical details that generally you can just ignore for the most part. This is close to canon, not quite, but close enough that most of us still say it. On to our next entry, we have Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt. Now, this one also takes place in that same time span, and it also makes for a great entry point, taking place in the latter half of the One-Year War. This is also a far more modern entry that serves as a small slice of that Universal Century conflict. And it features what is probably one of my favorite things, and it is a show that I would personally recommend to music nerds, of all people, believe it or not, for one big important reason, and it is the diegetic use of music in the show. Now, you have dual protagonists in this series, E.O. Fleming and Daryl Lorenz. E.O. Fleming is your protagonist for the Earth Federation forces, and his whole shtick is endurance. Now, see, the thing with E.O. is he's a Federation pilot. He gets himself into a Gundam. He likes to go fast. He is not going to slow down for a single person. He is reckless. He is headstrong. He doesn't let anything stop him. And because of that, he listens to free jazz like you're hearing right now. Thrash, bombastic, it's over the top. There is no stopping him. But, alternatively, the other protagonist you have is E.O. is Daryl Lorenz, a Xeon pilot. Mind you, he's a sniper, and on top of that, he's been disabled. He has lost both of his legs from below the knee. So he works with a bunch of other Xeon aces, and the living dead division. They're all these snipers who have faced loss, heartache on the battlefield, and losing a few of themselves, and so they have to build this sense of community. So he listens to music about battles. They have the same sense of community and camaraderie to it. I just can't help appreciating that. I'm sorry. It's one of those beautiful things that's really nice. And the final addendum I will add is that this one is also technically not canon in the UC timeline. Thankfully, though, for the two films that exist of this franchise, that's not really going to be an issue. It doesn't deviate too heavily from what is canon. Granted, there are a full 27 volumes of manga for this, so if you want more, you can always read it. Moving on, now we're going to jump into some alternate timeline stories. We've got a lot of good ones here that make for great entry beginner points. Starting with
Mobile Fighter G Gundam. And this follows Domon's journey of vengeance and pride, seeking to win the Gundam fight for Neo Japan. This is a world tournament, by the way, so they are all fighting against the nations of other Gundams that represent them, and the winner gets to rule over the Earth for 4 years. Now, this is kind of towing the line between Super Mecha and Real Robot, because it takes a full flip of the script where mobile suits in this have superpowers. They have signature moves, they're powering up like Dragon Ball Z and using Street Fighter level like action fight like combos. Just to make it go off on the rails here, there is a horse that is piloting a Gundam-sized horse in this.
I think some of you are doubting us.
Oh, cockpits as well. Apparently,
You don't have what it takes to be a fighter. It's impossible for you to defeat me. Let's do it. Boom Psyche.
I lack creativity.
Anyone who tries to thwart another's life
The Dark Gundam's desire to eliminate humanity is still alive!
Shut your mouth!
Just to go over the top there's also a Gundam that represents the Norway, and it's a windmill. It's a Gundam with a windmill in its chest.
The design
Mexico's
for-
Gundam has a straight up sombrero on it.
Yeah, Neo Mexico is one of my favorites. The cactus motif with the sombrero and
Yeah.
the trident. It can be in many times over the top, but in the most heartfelt and genuine way, with each nation having its own Gundam that represents its own cultural history and traditions.
But is it piloted by captains?
Unfortunately, no.
And funny enough, this was actually the first Gundam to get me into Gundam because of Toonami. They showed Gundam in Gundam G-Fighter and Gundam Wing.
Speaking of which,
Following up with Mobile Suit Gundam Wing, our Shakespearean child of the Gundam franchise. This follows Hero and the other Gundam pilots on Operation Meteors. They aim to stop the overreach of Oz, which is a tyrannical military force that has been pressing the space colonies. This was one of Gundam's biggest breakout hits in the West, and the dub is comedy gold, by the way, if you watch the English dub.
I am right over here, so come and kill me!
It never gets old.
I wish there was better context, right?
Then again, you probably get better experiencing it with watching it in this Japanese dub. It's very melodramatic. Like I said, it's very Shakespearean and follows a lot of soliloquy and character asides. And I think nostalgia is what kind of holds a special place in it for our hearts. And that's what it does for me. Going back and rewatching it, I still recommend it, as it's a great step away from the Universal Centuries and looking for something fresh.
Moving on to our next entry in the alternate timelines, we have Mobile Suit Gundam Seed. Now, this one's a bit of an interesting story. Gundam Seed came about around at the turn of the century, just after we hit the 2000s. Now, Sunrise was looking to do what is essentially a soft reset of the Gundam franchise. Create something that new people who had no history with the Universal Century could get into and get similar vibes as the Universal Century. So we got Seed. Seed is what happens when you take all the dials from UC Gundam and turn them all the way up to 11, break the knob. Everything is more extreme and more intense. It feels like a soap opera in a lot of respects. If you enjoy stuff like Inuyasha and a lot of those interpersonal drama moments where you have, characters on different sides who have these deep, intimate relationships with each other but have to fight each other, Gundam Seed is probably going to be what you will enjoy most.
Kira, you come along with us too! Huh? There isn't any reason why you should remain with the Earth forces. Believe me, the last thing I want to do is fight against you. But aboard that ship are people who I feel obligated to protect. My friends are on that ship! Then I've got no choice, Kira. The next time we meet in battle, I will show you no mercy. Same goes for me.
Now, the one point of order I will mention. This show is insanely popular in Japan. It is probably the most popular Gundam series in Japan. Here in the West, it is considered probably the most divisive Gundam series here in the West. People either love it with all the passion in their souls, or they consider it the child of Satan. For the sake of being impartial, neither one of us are going to voice our opinions on it. Take it as you will. It is definitely a solid entry with a lot of appeal to it. It is worth giving a shot.
One of us tells the truth and one of us tells a lie.
I promise to be impartial. Moving on to our next entry that is a solid choice, Gundam 00. This one was my first, actually. I remembered watching this on Sci-Fi Channel back when it aired back in the day. This one is honestly one of those series that takes a lot of the inspiration from both Wing and Seed and pulls in some of the best aspects of both of them. You have essentially this paramilitary organization that has declared war on war itself and will fight anyone that dares to declare war on another nation. And essentially what it does is try to put into picture the hypocrisy of taking such a stance.
Curios, moving on to bombard targets. And now I've become a mass murderer. So be it. Nothing just transformed. That is what celestial being is.
So, 00 was obviously in many ways inspired by the Bush-era administration and the things that happened in that time period, in that time frame. There's a lot of inspiration from the 9/11 terrorist attacks. There's a lot of inspiration from the Iraqi war, and sometimes it shows up in ways you wouldn't expect. For example, our protagonist goes by the codename of Setsuna F. Seye. That is not his actual name. His real name is Soren Ibrahim. He's a Middle Eastern character, believe it or not. Which, frankly, was a bit of a surprise for me even back in the day when I was watching it. But it's a welcome surprise. You have references to stuff like the IRA and bombings that would happen in Ireland at the time. There's, a lot of unique twists on Gundam that you don't normally see. And 00 is one of those series I can highly recommend. Please consider. Next up we have Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans. I hear a lot of happy folks about this one. So IBO is very dirty, very gritty, very harsh in its tone, to put it politely. Oh, sorry.
お前状況分かってんの？そのセリフを言えるのはお前か俺かどっちだ？無能な士気のせいで死ななくてもいいはずの仲間が死んだ。その落とし前はきっちりつけてもらう。ほっ。さて、これから CGS は俺たちのものだ。さあ選べ。俺たち宇宙ネズミの下で働き続けるか、それともここから出ていくか。どっちも嫌なら、こいつみたいにここで終わらせてやってもいいぞ。
Like I said, very dirty, very filthy, very gritty. There's honestly a lot of comparisons I could make with IBO to almost even say something like a Yakuza-style story, or my personal favorite explanation of it. Think of it like the Golden Age arc of Berserk, if you're familiar with that. You have a band of brothers, essentially, in a mercenary company that are working to better themselves and essentially fight for the betterment of people around them. It definitely hits that vibe. And I think one of the other favorite ways I've heard it described as is the antithesis of Gurren Lagann, if you're familiar with that story. Whereas with Gurren Lagann, soul, hope, energy, drive, those are the things that will push you forward. With Iron-Blooded Orphans, one has to be deliberate and think. And as far as Gundam alternative stories go, Iron-Blooded Orphans is a very, very solid choice. And last but not least, for our solid choices for the series, we've got Witch from Mercury. A lot of folks happy about this one. So, Witch from Mercury is a very solid series, actually from the same minds of people who did Code Geass, if you're familiar with that one at all. I believe it was the writer, if I'm not mistaken, for Code Geass who came on to help write for this series as well. Now, our protagonist, Suletta Mercury, is
best girl.
A golden retriever girl. And you know what? It shows. She is bright, she's bubbly, she is wonderful, a phenomenal protagonist.
Are you Suletta Mercury? Nice to meet you. I've heard a lot about you. I'm Mika Nanawa, a second year in mechanics. If you have any questions, just ask.
Sure thing. Thank you very much.
A little nervous, huh?
Let me see. I've never been to a school before.
6 months later.
Y'all already know.
Don't know you?
Anybody else suddenly craving tomato soup?
No, think of the gas.
Now, the reason why I say Suletta definitely has big golden retriever energy is the following. I don't think I've ever seen a woman smiling like that while she's caked in blood.
Oh.
I'm glad you're safe.
Be terrified too.
There is no dampening that spirit. So, for Witch from Mercury, I would definitely recommend this one for a lot of different groups. Do you like cyberpunk style stories with a lot of themes of transhumanism and human augmentation to them? Congratulations, we got you covered.
I ask for your trust in this.
You want our trust, yet you hide behind a mask.
My right arm, as well as most of my face, were both claimed by the magnetic field around Mercury. The environment there is unforgiving. However, if we can utilize our new drone technology, we'll be able to mine for permit without putting any human lives in the way of harm.
Like any good cyberpunk story, you have boardrooms full of heavy executives that want to make sure they're making the best decisions for their companies and all that, and themes of transhumanism. By that same token, you also have a lot of inspiration from stories like Revolutionary Girl Utena, with the high school setting, themes of dueling, arranged marriages, so on and so forth. It is definitely a series well worth watching. Highly recommend. So that covers most of our solid beginner entry recommendations. Those are the ones we're going to recommend for folks to choose as their first time starting watching Gundam. Now what we're going to do is cover some of the intermediate stories. Some of the stuff that we wouldn't necessarily recommend as a starting point. You definitely could start with some of these, and we'll mention the ones that we feel you could. But a lot of them have some baggage attached to them. Either we recommend that you've watched other stuff beforehand, or we're mostly presenting it as inspiration to get you to watch some of the other stuff as well. Sort of a, hey, here's a great goal to look forward to. Here you go. Starting with Mobile Suit Gundam F91. I believe we got this
So,
one.
Mobile Suit Gundam F91 follows our character Siwa Arno, and this was also a second movie that was made for the Gundam franchise. It was originally intended to be an animation, but they had to shorten it down. This follows Seabrook as he works to protect those he cares about from the invasion of the Crossbow Vanguard. Funny, cool thing to add, those were pirate Gundams, basically. They seek to establish an aristocracy called the Cosmo Babylonia. And this was meant to be a soft reboot of the Universal Century after Char's counterattack, and originally intended, like I said, as a full TV series. And it continues with the Crossbow manga, and we'll touch upon that when we start diving into that sector of the Gundam franchise.
I would actually recommend this one as a solid starting point if you are a manga reader, believe it or not, because the Crossbone manga is unfortunately probably never going to get adapted to screen. So if you love manga, Crossbone is definitely something worth reading, and F91 might be a solid starting point there for you to help launch you into it. Next up, we have Mobile Suit Gundam 0083 Stardust Memory. Hey, someone's excited for this one.
I had 3 Gundam toys as a kid. One of them was Full Burner, and it became my favorite of the 3. And it only made it official when I learned that Lincoln Park has a livery designed specifically for Full Burner.
Amen. So 0083 is one of those ones where it can technically serve as a decent entry point, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. There's a lot of baggage from the original Gundam that's probably worth watching before you get to this one. Ironically enough, this one actually serves as a pretty decent bridge between the original Gundam and Zeta Gundam. But it had a lot of great people working on it as well. You had folks who worked on shows like Armored Trooper Bottoms, for example, who were involved in working on this one. So, you have a lot of heavy mechanical details, some real veterans in it, and in a lot of ways you get Top Gun vibes more than anything out of this one. It's very, the first half of it focuses on what is essentially a test squadron of pilots who have to try and vie for their right to be the one piloting the titular Gundam show. You get those very cheesy 80s moments, for lack of a better way to phrase it. Very soulful.
What the hell are you doing back here?
I'm going back to my ship, but I want to fix this before I do, alright?
Out of pity?
No. I was just thinking. I was wondering what would I do if I ever were to actually quit being a pilot. I could make a living at being a technician, but
I know what you mean. Tura wants that sort of life for me. By living the life of a junkyard man wouldn't be so bad. So I thought. I was very wrong. As much time as I spend working in this crazy yard, I've never really felt like I belonged here at all. Deep down inside, when it boils down to it, I guess I'll always be just a pilot.
same with me.
Next time we meet, you'll be as enemies.
You got one hell of a new punch.
Yeah, you definitely get those 80s vibes with this one. You have that sort of soulful touch to it, and again, maybe not the best starting point, but still a very serviceable one, all the same. Next up, we have Mobile Suit Victory Gundam. This one's an interesting one. So, I want to provide some context for you folks. The year is 93, and you are Yoshiyuki Tomino, the big director of the original Gundam series. Sunrise basically tasked you with making F91, and it didn't go quite as well as you'd hoped. Now you get to Victory Gundam, and Sunrise is telling you, hey, that thing that prints us money, do it again. By this point, Tomino is horribly burnt out, and he's depressed as well, to the point where if stuff like the original Gundam, Zeta, the UC timeline in general has a very depressing tone, Victory Gundam ratcheted it up even higher.
お前が白いモビルスーツのパイロットだというのかいけないですか仕掛けてくるから僕はこんな現実があるというのかまだ遊びたい盛りの子供がこんなとこでこんなことをしちゃいかん子供が戦争をするもんじゃない
Now, for the sake of keeping things a bit more PG, what we didn't show you was after we cut away, that soldier was so distraught by the fact that his opponent in this war was a 13-year-old child that he pulled out a grenade, pulled the pin, and held it to his chest to commit suicide because he was so disgusted with himself. Victory Gundam is dark, to the point where even Tomino himself stated when it released on DVD, this DVD is unwatchable. Don't buy it. That being said, I would personally argue otherwise. Victory Gundam is so depressing that in some respects it almost becomes comical if you look at it through the right lens. Even still with that, it is absolutely worth watching. Tomino himself has rescinded that statement, and though he doesn't look on Victory Gundam in the best light, it is still a wonderful series. Is it one you should start with? No. No. Please, no. But do you want to watch it later down the line? Sure, go ahead. Just brace yourself ahead.
The 90s was not good to Mecha directors.
It was. Next up on our list, we have Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorn. There we go. We got some happy people about this one. Unicorn was actually one of my favorites too. And there's some context needed for this one as well. The last big Universal Century show that we got from Gundam, at least at this time period, was 08MST back in '94. So by the time Unicorn releases in 2010, it has been 16 years since we have gotten proper Universal Century Gundam. And this shot adrenaline into the UC timeline like a live wire. People were hype about this. Mind you, this one takes place after Char's counterattack, after the end of the Big Four. So is it a good starting point? Some people will tell you yes, I would personally argue no. This is one you definitely want to watch after you've seen the Big Four. But just because it has a lot of insane callbacks doesn't mean it's not a great series. And there's one little piece of thing I want to draw special attention to. You see that name right there under, music and who it was done by? Who here knows that name? Hiroyuki Sawano.
Go! Someone go!
Exactly. So this was Sawano's first introduction to doing music for anime. Now, mind you, if you don't know that name, you might recognize him from helping do the OSTs for stuff like Attack on Titan, or Solo Leveling, or some other great series. And if you haven't heard his music, congratulations, you're about to get it shot straight in your veins.
And my only desire, the beast of possibility, the symbol of hope. Father. Mother, I'm sorry. I must. I must go.
It still brings a tear to my eye at times.
Same. Yes.
Would you argue, instead of the big four, Unicorn would make it the big five, or would there be some holding back?
Technically, yes, but also no. Unicorn is good, don't get me wrong. Unicorn is great, but I would personally argue that in the grand scheme of things, it almost feels a little extraneous. This is also partially because it is an adaptation of a novel, not done by Tomino, but by another author by the name of Fukui, if I'm not mistaken. I might have that wrong, please don't sue me. I can't remember every single name, unfortunately, but Unicorn is one of those entries that a lot of people absolutely adore, and for very good reason. Would you start with it? I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but it's definitely something to work towards. Absolutely.
Don't watch the TV edit, it's terrible.
Now, watch the original OVAs. Watch the original OVAs. Next up, we have Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway. Oh, cheers, that's kind of a shame. Hathaway is what I would personally regard as almost a spy thriller of a Gundam. It's introspective, you know. Mind you, it's a movie trilogy, and only the first one has released here in the States. So, if you're watching this one, you're going to be on a bit of a cliffhanger unless you start reading the novels that Tomino wrote. But, hopefully, Sunrise will finally release the second one that was released in Japan about a month or so ago, finally here in the States. Now, like I said, it's got those spy thriller vibes, it's deep, it's introspective, and, you know what, I'll let it speak for itself.
Rafty's got too much school, if you ask me. Oh, it's nice that he's putting on a show, knocking the big shots out of the picture.
The way Matthew does things isn't right.
It's not like I don't know. Doing things this way is just. So tell me then, how does one go about destroying the depths of this mechanism? Human race as a whole can't possibly continue living on Earth. If we do, there'll be no consolation for the rebellion Shar started, or for the people who died back then. As long as there are exceptions, we will keep having inequities.
Time to head out, Fencer!
Looks like Kimberly responded pretty quick. Call from Fencer, don't screw this up. My condolences to the poor souls who get caught in tonight's crossfire. I hope that you'll forgive us.
Here they come.
Any additions?
That's basically is cooled down to the ground, and it also shows you just how horrifying it is to watch a mobile suit fighting another mobile suit from the civilian perspective.
Hathaway is, again, one of those entries that takes place after Shar's counterattack. This is not one I would recommend as a starting point, probably even more so than Unicorn. Unicorn, you could maybe skirt by with, just Googling references. Hathaway, though, you've got a lot more baggage attached. Not a great starting point, but still worth working towards.
We're gonna get another addition to the Gundam franchise, and you've guessed it, we're going back to the 1 year war because we can fit so much within a year's time span. We have Gundam Requiem for Vengeance, and this is a story that takes in the footsteps of not the Federation's pilots this time. It is in the Zeon's perspective, Zeon pilot's perspective. And this follows Iria and the Red Bolt Squadron as they desperately try to retreat back to Earth and escape from a mobile suit Gundam that is chasing after them. Now, this is something that isn't particularly following of the standard Gundam formula, and this takes a turn toward a slasher vibe, like Friday the 13th, where it's an unstoppable force of nature that just stalks you and kills everything around you.
Yes, sir! Federation's almost soon coming from the west! Get to your zones and get ready for combat! Enemy sight at 12 o'clock.
How cute! But he's finally got himself some movement.
Well, that is cool.
Now, as you were thinking, you're probably thinking, oh yeah, it's just gonna be another Gundam fight. We're gonna see them just battling it out. Nope, they're all dying. Like I said, this is their first encounter with a Gundam, other than the 0079 one. It just follows horrifying results.
The one thing I will personally mention with this one is that, as you might have noticed, this one is done in 3D animation in Unreal Engine 5. It's a bit of a departure from what I'm sure most of us are generally used to. Don't get me wrong, it looks decent, but for those of us that prefer 2D, that might be a bit of a hard sell. And on top of that, there's also the issue that this feels very American, primarily because it was written by Americans and not people from Japan. So tonally, to some extent, it might feel a little bit different, and that's part of why we added it as a 2D. Could it serve as a starting point? Sure, but it won't necessarily feel like what most of Gundam technically feels like.
3D animation, this is not even right?
Well, we'll get to Anglo, don't you worry. Next up, we have Mobile Suit Gundam G-Quux. This is the most recent TV series that Gundam has put out. It was actually directed by Kazuya Tsurumaki, who hopefully some of you might know as one of the big names on, Studio Kara's list. Who here likes Evangelion? Good, that's a lot of hands up. I'm glad to hear that. This was a collaboration between Sunrise and Studio Kara, who are known for doing stuff like helping out with the Shin Kamen Rider and Shin Godzilla films, but they're also probably a bit more well known for, the Rebuild of Ava films, which I'm sure a lot of folks who are familiar with them are very happy. Now, this show is technically a part of the Universal Century, but also not to a certain extent. Now, it technically fits in that role, but not necessarily. You get a lot of, essentially callbacks to the original and Zeta. So again, not necessarily the best starting point. I have heard a lot of people that have actually started with this show, and it actually inspired them to go back and watch some of the older entries. But bear in mind, this one is a bit dense with some of its references.
Any battle under Minovsky Particles takes place within visual range. So the one who first spots the other has the absolute advantage from the outside. That's only until the first strike out moves, because in order to attack, you must reveal yourself. Should that first shot be dodged, any advantage the pilot may have had is then lost. The technique of pairing up two mobile suits to compensate for the advantage you've lost is called MAV.
commonly called the lab captain. So say the textbooks used by the Armored Assault Force, at least.
Ironically enough, one of the more interesting tidbits is that let's avoid any of that reverb, please. As I was about to say, ironically enough, one of the inspirations for the show was, if you're familiar with the initial D of all things, with the whole, fights between two teams and, that sort of monster of the week flavor that it starts out with, where you've got different pilots that they're going up against in different teams. Again, you can start out with this one. Is it necessarily the best choice? Probably not, but I'd still say solid decision, definitely worth watching.
One of the things I'd like to add as well is that even though Tsurumaki worked on the majority of this show, a very noted director known as Hideaki Anno directed specifically the one-year portions of this show. A lot of people like to misconstrue and think that he directed the show, and this was Tsurumaki's work, but Hideaki Anno did play a role in this in the direction.
All right. On to some... Thank you, whoever just shouted out. I love this one too, believe me. After War Gundam X is going to be our next entry into the alternate timeline stories. And the only reason I put this one in intermediate primarily is because this one almost sort of features as like a what-if story. It takes a lot of the same aspects and ideas of the one-year war, but it takes them in a different direction. For example, what would happen if Zeon decided, we're not going down without a fight and we're taking you with us?
勝利を焦った革命軍は作戦を強行。連邦軍も一歩も退くことなくこれに挑戦。戦いは泥沼となり、ついには人類すべての故郷である地球に致命的なダメージを与えてしまった。100億を誇った人口のほとんどは失われた。もはや戦争に勝ちも負けもなかった。
Yeah, remember how we said colony drops were a bad thing? Yeah, basically all of them dropped. Earth's basically covered in craters, 10 billion people dead. So now we've got a world with Mad Max vibes and guns. You have gangs of raiders piloting mobile suits. You have, mercenaries working to do the best they can, and ironically enough, this series features, yet again, new types, much like Universal Century. So again, while technically you are free to start with this one, I would personally advise at least watching the original 97 Gundam before jumping into this one, just so that you have that added layer of context. Next up, Turn A Gundam. Turn A is probably what many would consider as Tomino's masterwork, his greatest hit, one of the best things he's ever done. And for good reason. Turn A is phenomenal. You have an incredible number of designs. Not only do you have Tomino working on it, you have Yoko Kanno doing the music. The person responsible for the music for Cowboy Bebop of all things. And on top of that, you've got Sid Mead doing the general art direction for the mobile suits and all that other stuff. So, you have the guy doing mechanical design who did stuff for Aliens and Blade Runner, also jumping in on this. Now, the one thing I will mention, Turn A is one of the shows that people will say, hey, this is the one you should watch last. I find that to be a little bit of an extreme statement. It is good, but by no means should you save this until you've been completely burned out by watching every other show. Can it make for a good starting point? Sure, absolutely. In fact, I'd even recommend it as a starting point. But it does have some callbacks to previous Gundam shows that I would at least recommend maybe having watched some of the original series and some of the other alternate stories that released before this one. Turn A is great. I highly recommend it. It might not be the best starting place, but it still serves as a good one either way. Next up, we have Mobile Suit Gundam Age. This one is an interesting and unfortunate story to some extent. Age is a generational story. You have multiple different generations of pilots. You have Flit Asuna, the original protagonist, who then passes down the technology for his Gundam onto his son, and then that son passes it on to his grandson. You have a story that takes place over like 60-some years. And on top of all of that, it was done in collaboration with Level 5 Studio, who maybe some of you might know for doing stuff like Professor Layton or the Yokai Watch games. This was originally intended to be a video game, but Sunrise liked the idea so much that they said, hey, let's just make an entire anime out of it. Now, there is a problem. It does feel a little bit video gamey with its plot at times. You do have these moments where it almost feels like, oh, hey, we read the script to get here. Now, granted, what I will say, I would actually encourage this as probably a child's first Gundam series, if you want something to introduce them to. The plot's a bit more simplistic, so you don't have to worry about heavy political themes bogging it down, and it's still something that you can follow along with without having to worry too much about that sort of stuff. Next up, we have Mobile Suit Gundam Build Fighters. This is also one I would probably recommend if you've got kids and you want them to watch it, because this is basically Gundam, but take the premise of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh's, we all love Yu-Gi-Oh! It's basically a world where everything revolves around a children's card game. Build Fighters takes the same premise, but everything revolves around Gundam model kits.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, that's the Wing Gundam. It can transform into bird form for high-speed flight. And it has a large caliber cluster rifle. Firepower and mobility. It excels in both. In fact, this is a mobile suit developed by Dr. J for an underground organization that opposed the United Earth Sphere Alliance, and when that organization launched Operation Meteor, it entered the battlefield and began...
Kid, we got you, thanks.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I feel right about now. Long story short, it's a great series. And in fact, one of my favorite jokes is, the correct way to watch Gundam is watch Build Fighters. Oh hey, I like this design. Find out what series that's from and then watch that series. Then return to Build Fighters. It's a bit of a funny joke.
Like, the joke now for it is if it was real, trying to fix your model after it's destroyed would be super expensive.
It would. Again, this is probably one I would definitely recommend if you have small children in the house and you want to, give them a new anime to watch as well. And on top of that, it's also great for us adults too. It's honestly a breath of fresh air compared to a lot of Gundam because you have far lowered stakes. It doesn't feel like lowered stakes because you still care about the characters, but you're not dealing with life or death situations. Thank goodness for a change. Last but not least on our list of advanced intermediate recommendations, we have Gundam Reconquista MG. This was the final piece of media that Tomino worked on as of currently, and is one of the more interesting series he's done. You might notice from some of the visuals that we have up there that this honestly looks a lot more colorful compared to what we've seen, and artistically from a visual perspective, G-Reco is beautiful. I am talking drop dead gorgeous. But, and there is an unfortunate but here, the pacing is a little bit rushed. Tomino is used to working within a 50-episode framework. G-Reco only has 26 episodes. I think you get where I'm going with this. Granted, there are compilation films that help solve a lot of those pacing issues, but you can definitely feel it while you're watching G-Reco. Is it bad? No, not at all. People love G-Reco, and for good reason, but it's not what I would necessarily recommend as a first watch. Now we're going to get into some of the stuff that's a bit more advanced. This is stuff that is either incredibly niche or incredibly troublesome. Starting with the Gundam G-Savior. This is a live-action Gundam movie. I wish that was a joke. Lee, I will never forgive you for making me watch this.
Yes, we're going to watch all Gundam. We're we're gonna watch all of them.
Yes, unfortunately. Realistically, G-Savior isn't that bad. It generally compares with something like a B movie you'd see running on sci-fi back in the early 2000s. It's only real sin is having the Gundam name attached to it. Granted, if you really want to enjoy G-Savior, there's a better solution. Read the novel. Because there's a novelization of it that's actually amazing, believe it or not.
Something to suffer through worse than a colony drop.
And last but not least, we have Mobile Suit Gundam MS Igloo. Who here remembers Final Fantasy Spirits Within? Yeah, that's basically equivalent to this. We have dived deep into the uncanny valley with this one. It's originally 3D animation from the very early 2000s, and let's be real, those are faces only a mother could love if I'm being frank. When you don't see actual people on screen and just mobile suits, it doesn't look that bad. It kind of looks like, you know, a PS1 like FMV sort of thing. But when you get people on the screen, it gets a little bit hard to bear, and it's... The irony is the story for MS Igloo is pretty good, but again, it's not something I would recommend just sheerly for visual reasons, and I don't do that often. So, has this list been comprehensive? Absolutely not. There's a ton of stuff we haven't mentioned. But I figure you're all smart enough to connect the dots and figure out what stuff we might have missed, and figure out where it would probably sit in this list of things. So now that you know all of these different shows, here's the follow-up question: where do you go to watch them? I wish I had a good answer for this. Here we go. All right, Crunchyroll's going to be your general. Yeah, I know, right? Ridiculous. Crunchyroll's going to be your best place for the majority of it. Netflix is the only place you can watch Hathaway or Requiem for Vengeance. Hulu is the only place you can watch Await the Nest Team. Tubi, of all things, is the only place you can watch After War Gundam X and Gundam Age, and Amazon Prime is the only one that has Gundam G-Books. 0081 in the Pocket, F91, Stardust, all these ones down here. Yeah, no legal streaming option. Fortunately for you, I have a solution, and it doesn't get me banned by the convention for advocating for piracy. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna. No. Most of the Gundam series, if you just search their name in YouTube, you will probably find a full playlist of the entire show there. God bless YouTube for this.
Half Price Books also has sometimes. You just randomly find like for MS Teen's entire collection. I'm probably gonna guess that someone passed away and it got donated.
Were you referencing Gundam info?
Yes. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Yes. They are a wonderful channel. You can usually just search a Gundam title's name. You will usually find a full playlist of it on YouTube. God bless the people that do that. So you've watched the shows now. Let's assume that's the case. Let's assume you've watched plenty of Gundam. What do you do now? Is it just an anime that you watch and you're just like, okay, yeah, I'm done with this now. We can move on with life? Nope. Guess what? We've got video games, if you like video games. Here are some of the ones I would personally say are some of my standout favorites. You've got Zeonic Front back on the PS2, this slow, clunky, methodical style game where you're leading squadrons and everything dies in 1 or 2 hits, so you have to be very careful about things. You've got Gundam Extreme vs. Maxiboost, which is a 2v2 arena fighter with basically some of the favorite mobile suits from across the franchise. You got Federation versus Zeon, that are taking place in different battles throughout the history of the 1 Year War. Gundam Unicorn for the PS3. Hey, who knows FromSoft, the guys that did Dark Souls or Bloodborne, or Elden Ring, or what's that other mech game they did? Oh yeah, Armored Core. Yeah, they made a Gundam game, believe it or not. They got commissioned to do this one, and it plays just as good as you'd imagine. It is great. Okay, let's say you don't like video games. What if you want a different type of game to play? Congratulations, we got you covered. We got tabletop games and card games. The Gundam card game just released about, I'd say almost half a year ago or so back, and it's still coming out with new stuff. And Gundam Assemble is a skirmish-style war game that's coming out towards the end of the year, probably about around December, November-ish, which is going to give Warhammer 40K a run for its money. Okay, let's say you don't like games at all. Let's say you just want to read. We've got great manga selections as well. We mentioned Crossbone before. It is phenomenal. Highly worth reading. Cannot recommend it enough. If you liked Gundam Seed, hey, guess what? There's an entire manga series called Astray. Fantastic stuff. Say you want something more lighthearted and slice of life. We have Office Worker Haman, which takes some of the characters from Zeta and Double Zeta and puts them in a Sanrio-style Japanese office and has them basically act like it's Agretsuko. It's a wonderful tone of pace. And then we even have some stories that are exclusive to manga, like Gundam 8, which basically plays out like, hey, what if we did Gundam but made it post-apocalyptic Pacific Rim? Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Okay, let's say you're too niche for manga. Let's say you want to read an actual book. Rare, I know, but hear me out. We got novels. We got Gundam Sentinel, another great example. Takes place during the Double Zeta period. You've got Federation soldiers wiping out remnants of the Titans. We have Beltorchica's children. Tomino's original idea for behind what would be Char's counterattack. We've got G-Savior. Hey, you can read it. It's way better this way. We've got Gaia Gear, which is Tomino basically throwing things into the far future, literally creating clones of characters from the original show. It's wild. And probably the biggest thing, Gunpla. All this stuff we have right up here in front of you is Gundam plastic model kits that me, myself, and Lee have built over probably the past, I don't even want to get into time span. Basically what you do is you take a bunch of plastic runners you get in a box, buy a pair of like plastic snippers, cut them out, push fit assemble them, and boom! You've got a completed model that you can pose, play with, treat like an action figure, set up on your shelf. You could even customize it, give it its own custom paint job. I mean, we have a couple examples there, the Seto Kaiba Gundam or the One Punch Machine. People will do a lot of creative kit bashes and interesting things with them, and you know, the sky is the limit really. You have the tools to make whatever you want out of these. Now, when it comes to Gunpla, grade determines everything.
Yes, so starting off with our Gunpla, we have high grade, which is 1/144th scale, and it's your standard entry point for most of your Gunpla model kits. Entry grade is also, but there's very niche and few to select from. From high grades, you'll find a wide variety. Almost any suit that was in the anime, you will find in a high grade scale. Almost any. There's minus a few. But most of them are very show accurate and quite articulated and very, very detailed for what it is. The next step is real grade, and I would say that this is the more intermediary, more skilled build. Its average cost is around $30 to $60, and high grades being $20 to $40. This is still in 1/144th scale, so you can keep them in the same scale with your high grades. There is intricate level of detail, machinations, pistons, and moving gears that are within these machines, and it's supposed to replicate what a Gundam would look like in real life if we happen to have ever built one. God, I wish.
Do you though? Do you really?
It's like a monkey's paw.
Yeah, I get it.
For the master grades though, this is a step up. Think of real grades, but sizing them up to 1/100th scale. These have even more details, even more cogs and machinery that goes on. Working cockpits, opening up to show the pilots on the inside. These are bigger and more robust, or not more robust, I'd say just bigger machines, and I would not recommend them for people that are just getting into it, neither with real grades. You are looking to set aside probably a couple days with master grades if you don't really know how to put things together as intricately, if you're not that much of a hobbyist. Moving up from that scale is what I would say is the master's level. Ironically for master grade, but this is like the person who could is building like the cars, car builders. This is the perfect grade, and I wouldn't recommend this at all for beginners. You're looking anywhere from $150 to a maximum of $680, being the most recently released perfect grade New Gundam Unleashed. Like I said with car builders, kind of like, you know how in some of those model cars you're going to be building a carburetor. That's what these are. These are in 1/60th scale. So where you see with the high grades over here, you're looking at something about probably around up to here in perfect grade. Take everything from a dial of 10 and put it to 100 in terms of machinations and detailing in these things. These things have metal pieces, plastic pieces, anything you can think of. And if you have a full-time job, I would recommend setting aside a month to build a perfect grade.
Now, per convention rules, we are not allowed to shell out any companies. We have not been paid by any companies, and we are not allowed to shell out one in particular. So we're going to recommend multiple. Because we're allowed to skirt around the rules like this. Where do you want to buy Gunpla if you're looking to get some? We have some great online retailers that Lee and I have personally used in the past that we would highly recommend. Newtype.us, usagundamstore.com, gundamplanet.com, and if you want some of the more exclusive, rare-to-find Gundam that only get released for a short window and then poof, gone forever, Premium Bandai at pbandai.com. Now, what I will tell you is, avoid using Amazon at all costs. Amazon is full to bursting with scalpers. Please avoid it. You will wind up getting overcharged almost triple the price of a kit. It's not worth it. I promise you.
Same with eBay.
Yeah. Now, let's say you don't want to buy on the internet at all. Let's say you want to shop local, which I would highly recommend. Support your brick and mortar stores. We have 3 recommendations for stores that Lee and I use regularly and would highly recommend. First up, Build Up Import Hobby off in Independence, Missouri. I know the owner of that shop very well. Jared is a phenomenal guy. Every time I go there, I'm probably talking with him for about an hour or so before I'm out the door. So, yeah, take it from me. He's a wonderful guy. It's a wonderful store. You'll usually see a wide variety of some of the newest kits that have been released there. Next up on the list, Hobby Haven, actually less than 5 minutes away from us, just up the road on Metcalf. Great shop. Not only do they have Gundam stuff, but they've also got, model trains and cars and planes, RC cars and RC planes too. Wonderful place. And last but certainly not least, the store that's probably had my business for the longest amount of time since I was in high school, Tabletop Game and Hobby. I see you, man. Yeah, no, this place is wonderful. I've been shopping there since I was in high school. Not only do they sell just about Gunpla as well, but they've also got, D&D miniatures, Warhammer 40K stuff, rule books, tabletop games in general, and they're also connected to the Cardboard Cafe, which, Lee and I, we usually go there every weekend, every now and then, to actually build our Gundams out in public. So, it's a great excuse to get out, hang out with friends, and, have some fun out there. So with that being said, I would like to thank you for letting us hold your attention for this long. Like I said, we do have a selection of mobile suits that we've displayed up here. If you want to come up and take a look, by all means, feel free to. All I'll ask is please look with your eyes, not with your hands. And with that being said, if there's anything you take away from this panel, let it be this. Watch more Mecha, watch more old school anime, and Gunpla's a great excuse to get out with friends, build stuff. So if we have any questions at all whatsoever, now is the perfect time to ask them. Anyone? Anything? I'd say we've done our job pretty well from the looks of things. Thank you so much for letting us take your time. I appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of your con and a wonderful week.